during my workshop, right? Do you want to tell people how you won the prize? Do you want to make the sound?
Yeah, well, we had this human programming exercise where we all had to sort of be a sound, and I think I was the...
Yeah, that's the one. That's the winning sound, right?
So I won a sign book. It's amazing. I have it in my office. I think I brought it with me for the workshop, actually.
Great, cool. Cool. Okay, so obviously I'm going to talk a little bit about Raspberry Pi, but before I do that, I kind of want to talk a little bit about what the speakers before me have talked about. And it's always difficult to go after two amazing speakers talking about a subject that you're passionate about, talking about projects that you're a huge fan of as well, but I'm going to do my best. And that's to try and talk a little bit about where I come from and what happened to me as a teacher in the UK through this big change that we've gone through. So I started out as a teacher. I was a teacher in a school. I was what was known as an ICT teacher. We're now called computing teachers. And that's because ICT as a subject got a really bad press. And you heard Ian Livingstone talk about Nesta's Next Gen report that they put out. And you then heard about Eric Schmidt and our Prime Minister and all the government standing up. And what he didn't mention, which was the fallout from that, which was for teachers. The press picked up what was being said by these people and then just run with this line that ICT teaching in the UK was terrible. ICT teachers were the worst teachers on the planet. We were, evil. We were doing terrible things to children, which is not the case at all. And so to kind of fight against this whilst I was teaching, I did two things. One, I set up a YouTube channel. It's called Geek Girl Diaries, and I make video tutorials specifically to try and get girls into computer science, but also just for children generally. And I was one of the first teachers to pick up a Raspberry Pi when they were released in 2012 and brought it into my classroom. And I'll talk a little bit about that right now. So I wrote a book that we just talked about as well. And everything that was in that book was what I used to teach with my students. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's been such a popular book for learning about computer science and Raspberry Pi. It's because everything in it I've done with children and they've learnt through it. I was lucky enough to win an award for it as well at the beginning of this year. So I was a teacher. This is me teaching. This photo not staged in any way. Of course, all my children look at me like this when I'm talking as I impart knowledge to them. This is very normal. Probably more realistic is a picture like this. Here you can see some Raspberry Pis on the table and some students answering some questions. And I really fundamentally believe this, and that's that computer science is for everyone. I've been kind of tallying how many times someone has used the word coding today. I think we need to be really careful about how often we use this term coding, because that's not what we're talking about. I was in the States for ISTE, which is a big teachers conference in the States in June, and I was running a little like birds of a feather chat with some teachers, and one of them stopped me about 10 minutes in and said, "Sorry, I thought this was going to be about coding." And for the first 10 minutes, I'd been talking about nothing but computer science. And they said to me, "Well, I'm doing coding because I do an hour of code every year." And I'm really nervous that we're putting computer science into this hour box and it's becoming a fad. Hey, we're doing coding because we did an hour of it this year, and so we've done that now. We made a game in Scratch, and we now know, we can go off and be computer scientists. And that's not really the case, and I think we need to be really careful. And we need to make it as inclusive as possible as well. And so when Ian was talking this morning, he talked about the Next Gen report and about all the companies and the government and how they changed the curriculum. He left out one important area and one important group of people, and that's were the teachers. There were lots of teachers and academics in the UK at the time who were also pushing for a new curriculum. I was not teaching Word, Excel and PowerPoint in my classroom. I was trying to teach computer science, even though it wasn't on the curriculum at the time, and I wasn't alone. There was a group, a grassroots organisation called Computing at School. I'm pleased to say I now sit on the board of this particular group. And it's made up of academics and teachers. It has over 20,000 members in the UK and worldwide. That's how many people join up. It's a community, there's a forum, people share their resources with each other. Members run local hubs to share their knowledge with other teachers. And it's a real grassroots movement, and it's really nice. And I really urge you to go and have a look at the website and take part in those conversations. So, the new computing curriculum, this is where we are at the moment. You know, this is, if you were to kind of take the programme of study for computer science in the UK and just break it down, this is pretty much what it is. From the age of 5, children will learn how to code and program from the age of 5. And you can see what they need to be learning in terms of being able to code and program. That's understanding algorithms, sequencing, selection and repetition. But by the time they're 11, they need to be able to program in 2 programming languages. One can be visual, but the other one must be a text-based programming language. And quite often we see people, when they talk about the new curriculum, you see lots of stuff with Scratch, see lots of visual programming, and that's great for primary, but actually at secondary they need to be stepping up to a text-based programming language. And that's causing a few concerns in some places, because of course the government brought out this new curriculum, but did not invest any money in the upskilling of teachers. No money for teachers to improve their skills. So if they don't have a background in computer science, they don't know how to program, where do they turn? Well, they're turning to each other through computing at school and to CAS-master teachers, but they're not really sure where else they can turn at the moment. And so the government actually invested £3 million in the upskilling of teachers, which works out about £175 per school. So that doesn't release a teacher for one day to do a training course, let alone pay for a training course. So this is a real problem at the moment in the UK. Well, where else in the world do computing curriculums exist? It's really important to say here, people often talk about the UK computing curriculum. It's not true. It only applies to England. The devolved nations do not follow the new programme of study. Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland set their own curriculums. Right now, they don't have a computing curriculum. Scotland are currently looking at they're reviewing their curriculum right now. We're expecting them to include computer science in their next iteration, but we're definitely not expecting it for Wales or Northern Ireland at the moment. Where else in Europe? Well, famously, Estonia also have a computing curriculum now, which it doesn't differ too much from ours. At Raspberry Pi, we're helping to support Estonia in this move. We've helped train some of their teachers. We've supplied some hubs in Estonia with Raspberry Pi kits, and we're really trying to help them because we're finding teachers are having the same problems that we're having in England. Australia have also moved towards their first ever national curriculum. The territories normally have their own curriculums, but they're trying to build this national curriculum. And I'm friends with a great guy in Australia called Dr. James Curran, who has helped lead the push for computer science education in Australia. I was really lucky to go there in August and see what was happening. And they're now at the point where at state level they're about to ratify that curriculum, so it should be in place in the next few years, which is quite exciting. New Zealand, they also do a lot of stuff with CS Unplugged. They've been doing some stuff for a while. And what surprised me when I was doing some research was that Israel have had computer science in their curriculum for about 10 years. So we're certainly not the first. And like Christine said, last year I was in Denmark talking about this. I'm here talking about it. I've been to Sweden to talk about this. It feels like a country around Germany. Like I feel like the Scandinavian countries in Germany, somewhere someone is gonna change their curriculum, and I think then you're all going to snowball and follow, which would be really exciting for me to see that happening. So where does Raspberry Pi fit in? Well, we have this real kind of image problem, which we need to address straight away. Yes, the Raspberry Pi is a device. It's a credit card-sized computer. But I work for the Raspberry Pi Foundation. We're a charitable organisation. We just happen to be funded in this slightly unique way, in that people buy a Raspberry Pi, and 100% of the profits go towards the foundation, and we are able to spend them on our mission, which is to improve the education of adults and children in the fields of computers and computer science and related subjects. So basically what we're talking about is educating anyone of any age in every subject ever. That's basically our mission, which is quite broad. Yeah. So some guys at the Cambridge University and in the UK, in around 2007, many of them were involved in the administration at Cambridge University of the computer science courses. They have 80 places on a computer science course at Cambridge every year. And they found that what used to be a really hotly contested academic course, they weren't getting nearly as many people apply for it as they did in the past. So around 2007, they kind of got together and discussed ways in which they could try and stop that from happening. And the Raspberry Pi Foundation was born, and they developed the Raspberry Pi device that now exists. So, you know, people often ask me, you know, why should I use Raspberry Pi in my classroom? And my answer is, well, don't. You shouldn't, right? Like, it's a tool like anything else. Like Arduino, like microbit, like a tablet, like anything else. It's a tool. It was not designed to go into classrooms. It was designed for home use, right? But I took it into my classroom for a bunch of reasons because it made sense to me. It's not going to make sense to everybody. There is some really exciting things about it, but you know, I'm not a salesperson for Raspberry Pi, I'm a salesperson for computer science. But let me go through the reasons why I took it into my classroom. So first of all, for me, it was a classroom solution. At the time, my classroom had Microsoft networked computers, and I asked my network technician if we can install Python so that my students could write some programs and run them, and they said no. In fact, our network was on lockdown and we couldn't run any executable files whatsoever. So it meant I couldn't actually teach what I wanted to teach the students. So Raspberry Pi made sense because I could just bring them in, plug them into the monitors and keyboards and mice, and it didn't matter if they broke anything on the Raspberry Pi because I could just wipe it and start again. Obviously, it's cheap as well because they only cost $30. So it means that if they did break it in other ways, it didn't really matter. It was quite cheap. It wasn't as expensive as a laptop or a tablet. And this one is one of my favorites, right? You can control real-world objects. It has 40 pins on it now. Originally, it had 26, and they're called general-purpose input-output pins. What it means is you can plug them, you can connect it to real-world objects like lights, or a fridge, or just so many number of things that you can connect it to. And then children or anyone programming with it can control those objects with code, which is very, very exciting. You can do things like project-based learning. Cross-curricular projects are really exciting. Embedding computer science within other subject areas. Art projects kind of built around Raspberry Pi are really exciting. We have something in the UK called Pupil Premium. This refers to children who have claimed free school meals in the past 6 years. So any child that falls into that category, you as a school get special payment for those children. And you can only spend that money on those children. So in some ways it's great because it's extra funding to help some of the poorest children. But it kind of comes with its own problems in that you can only spend it on those children. So I couldn't take a class on a trip because not all of the children would qualify. And then you're kind of pointing out who qualifies as Pupil Premium and who doesn't, and so that causes problems. But what we're finding in the UK, and something I did in my classroom, was I was able to use that money to buy that child a Raspberry Pi that they could take home, and then had their own computer, because quite often they come from families where they had one computer in the household. Quite often they weren't allowed to use it in case they broke it or they deleted all the family's photos. And so to give them their own computer was really powerful, and they were actually able to do homework for other subjects on it. Something that we do at Raspberry Pi, which I'll talk about later, is we write free resources and we give free training for teachers. And so that's kind of a cool reason to use it. But this, for me, is the most important reason. Around Raspberry Pi, there has built this fabulous and amazing community of people who just want to help teachers and they want to help children. And I'll show you some examples of that in a bit. So, as I mentioned, the government didn't invest any money in training, so one of the first things I did when I joined Raspberry Pi was set up our free teacher training program, which we call Pi Academy. We launched it in April 2014. We've run lots and lots and lots of these 2-day courses, which are completely free for teachers. They come along, we kit them out, and we spend 2 days kind of hacking on projects, which is a lot of fun. Google saw what we were doing, and so Google gave us some money to take it on the road, so to speak. Google have digital garages in the UK. They set up in like pop-up venues for 6 months in cities in the UK. They had one in Leeds, which has just closed, and they've got one in Birmingham at the moment, and we're expecting another venue at some point. And we're able to use those spaces to run some courses, and I can show you what that's like.
been a really good event to have experts on hand who are so willing to share their information. Really important for teachers to have access to that, so it's been really good.
I bought the pies to originally use with Key Stage 4 as part of the GCSE computing qualification. I plan on dropping that right down to Year 7 and trying to get some projects in Key Stage 3. Certainly some of the more fun aspects of using motors and the linking with the electronics boards will be excellent. I'll be using them in my academy.
What I enjoyed most was that sense of working together on a project. So people that you'd never met before. You just stay next to a Raspberry Pi and then you start brainstorming and building an amazing project. So that's something that I like the most.
I think for myself as a brand new teacher and anyone else that wishes to upskill, these events are absolutely essential in order to meet new people, gain new knowledge and just share ideas really.
Bully and beg and borrow them to try and come to Ireland now. Set one of these up for me at home, but yeah, definitely it's been brilliant. I've never been on CPD like it. It's just brilliant. Big thumbs up.
And so you might have seen there was a lot of really physical computing projects that the teachers made. They're all completely thought up by and made by the teachers who come on that 2-day course. So they come in with an idea and we help them realise it by the end of the 2 days. And that's what they really, really enjoy, is having that time, that hands-on experience of getting started with something. And the kind of training doesn't stop there. They have this 2-day experience. We certify them, we give them a badge, they become a Raspberry Pi certified educator. They have access to a forum of their own on Google+, in which they share ideas with each other and pictures, and if they get stuck, they help each other out. They contribute resources back to us that we use on our website. And we're trying to set up some kind of conference where they can meet up again and do some more work with each other. We're also trying to get them access to some online training that they can do in their own time. So where are our certified educators? Well, this map doesn't really do it justice. They're actually global. They're all over the world. We have teachers from all over the world who have travelled to the UK to take part in this training. And this year we were able to launch at the White House in the States that we're going to have 4 Pi Academies in the USA next year. And we're looking to figure out how we can scale this and actually how we can make it global, how teachers everywhere can take part in this free training. So Pi Academy has become quite a popular training course. What we try to do is not sell Raspberry Pi. We try to teach computational thinking. We try to show how computer science can be creative and fun and cross-curricular. And one of the really exciting things for me as the person who leads the education mission at the foundation is that we've found other ways in which we can help train teachers. And so something that's become really popular in the UK is something called high altitude ballooning with Raspberry Pis. And so this year we launched our first ever Sky Academy.
I think the main thing is just the confidence to know that this stuff is possible. It's not someone faking it on a website and making it up. You know, people can do it. We can launch balloons and get them back, take them up to 28,000 metres. The fact that that's achievable in a context that I could go back and do with the school is just really good in terms of confidence now.
As soon as I saw it, I thought, here's something with the absolute wow factor to get all our pupils really excited about programming, about science, and particularly for the year sixes to go on to secondary school with a really positive attitude.
These sort of events are gold dust. They are the sort of thing that you don't get in any other situation. Good quality CPD is very, very hard to come across, and this is the best I've ever experienced.
So I should probably give a bit of context to that. Raspberry Pi is small enough and light enough that you can, and with the Pi camera, which is an add-on, you can attach a GPS module to it and some radio tracking devices to it, stick it in a polystyrene box, attach it to a helium balloon and set it off. And you can track where that balloon has gone to. It gets to the upper atmosphere, the helium inside expands, and then you saw in that video, you saw the balloon burst. And then it falls back down to Earth with a parachute, and you're able to track where it is with GPS and go and collect it. And all the way it's going up, it's taking photographs all the time and actually sending those images down, streaming them down. So children can actually be watching the chase as it's happening. And that's in fact what was happening during the training course. We had a lot of schools who were watching and tracking it in class, watching it happen. So Sky Academy was a way for us to help train educators. Again, it was kind of 2.5 days of continued professional development. And for some of those teachers, it was the first time they'd ever done any high altitude ballooning. And because the devices are so cheap, it puts this kind of program in the hands of children in schools everywhere. And that's really exciting. It really makes STEM an exciting subject. It demonstrates how computer science is more than just, coding. This is much bigger and more exciting and has real-world applications. The Weather Service in the UK, they send off balloons all the time, every day, collecting data. And so the whole time it's going up, it's collecting data, it's sending images and that data down that you can track. On the day, we launched 5 balloons. As one of the balloons was launched, we noticed it wasn't going up very quickly. And so, we guessed pretty much straight away that there was not enough helium in it. And so there was 4 teams. One of the teams' balloon actually ended up in the sea because we launched from Cambridge and most of them ended up just near the coast, but not quite in the sea. But unfortunately, one of them did go down in the sea. My office think I'm here actually looking for that balloon because they think it's probably washed up here. It's the office joke that that's actually what I'm doing. So if you see a balloon, it does have our address on it, so do send it back to us because we might still be able to retrieve the pictures. But since the course, which was in June, July, the teachers have gone away, we've given them kit, and we've said, can you do a launch yourself with your school? And so since then, we've already had 3 independent launches with children. In fact, this school, they had the entire Year 8 group out on the field to watch the launch. I saw pictures of them all with cameras like this, with their phones, filming it. And then the children themselves actually were in the chase car chasing down the balloon and collecting it. And this is one of the children. You can just see his face, how excited he was to let that balloon go and then collect it later on. So, we're trying to demonstrate that we're willing to train teachers in lots of different ways if we think it will help them engage their students. And so I should talk a little bit about another program that we have running as well, which is called the Raspberry Pi Creative Technologists. And so we've talked a lot here about training teachers. in the hope, because they're on the front lines, that they will help train and inspire children. But actually, we've got this problem in England where we've got a whole generation who are not skilled. Right, so when I was at school in the 80s and 90s, you know, I benefited from a curriculum that did include computer science. But then one was brought out in the 90s, which was very, you know, application-based, you know, just to kind of consume technology. And now we've put computer science back in the curriculum. So there's this whole generation who are completely de-skilled. And so we've launched this particular initiative. In fact, Rachel Rains, who's our creative producer, she's heavily pushed this. She was our artist in residence, and she's really big into digital art. She was really passionate about finding 16 to 21-year-olds who had an interest in art, perhaps did not have the best skills in computer science, and quite a few of the applicants were children who were not going to go to university, not going to go on to further education. Like, how can we help these kids? And so for a year, we've taken them under our wing, we've given them lots of equipment. They go on field trips to different arts events. They're taking part in the Arts Award, and they're going to have an exhibition of their artwork. And they've all got different disciplines, which is really exciting. So we've got an animator, we have a storyteller, we've even got a magician as part of the group. And we're working with these amazing partners to try and bring this program together. So kind of watch out towards the beginning of next year. When they kind of get to the end of that program, it'll be really exciting to see what they produce. And something else we do at the foundation, which really underpins all of this training that we do, which we often overlook, is that we write completely free resources, tutorials, lesson plans, you know, just how to get started with things. They're completely free, and I don't just mean you don't pay for them. They're free in terms of the license that we use. They're Creative Commons share-alike license, which means you can take them, remix them, make them your own, and you're perfectly welcome to do that. That's what we do. And so later today after lunch, I'm running a workshop which is based on one of the resources that I've written. So do come have a go if you want to have a go. We're also involved in lots of really big projects. So this is our biggest project at the moment. It's called AstroPi. In December, our first ever British ESA astronaut is flying up to the International Space Station. He's taking 2 Raspberry Pis with him. And so this year, children in the UK have been competing to have their code run on the International Space Station by Tim Peake on the Raspberry Pi. And what this means is that children who have this equipment, the Raspberry Pi and a Sense Hat, and they're writing their computer programs in Python, Tim Peake is going to have the exact same kit on the International Space Station. So it means they have something that's on the International Space Station. And I can't tell you how hard it has been to get Raspberry Pi through all the tests it needs to get through in order to have it aboard the International Space Station. But what we're going to be doing in the workshop later on is we're going to use the Sense Hat and we're going to run some programs. One of the winning programs that's going up, which will be run on the International Space Station, is called Flags. And some children in the north of England, they came up with this idea that when the ISS flies over the Earth, the camera will point out the window, the camera will recognise what country it's flying over, and it will display on the LED matrix that country's flag, which is quite nice. So they'll always know what country they're flying over. So that's pretty cool. Another project we're running at the moment is the Weather Station project, which is with thanks to Oracle, who have helped fund this. We've given out 1,000 kits, Raspberry Pi kits, around the world to schools across the globe. They're going to set up these Raspberry Pi weather stations, and then all that data is going to go into an open data platform through Oracle. And so it's like a global weather station project, a global weather gathering experiment where children will be able to use that data, map that data, do lots of interesting things with that data. And so, unfortunately, the applications for this is closed, so if you're a school and you really want to get involved, I'm afraid that time has passed, but you never know, we might do it again. Hopefully we're going to get a map out that shows where all the 1,000 schools are, so there could be one in Norway, and you might be able to find out more about that. Something else that we're really heavily involved in is finding or funding different types of software that you can use, not only on Raspberry Pi, but other platforms that engage children with computer science. So hands up if you've heard of Minecraft. Yep, that's pretty good. So we have a special version of Minecraft on Raspberry Pi called Minecraft Pi. And the exciting thing about it is that rather than spending hours and hours and hours building structures in Minecraft, with Python code, you can actually program them. And this often blows the mind of children like never before. Martin O'Hanlon and his website Stuff About Code, he's a friend of the foundation, he's a fantastic community member, and he is just such an expert in this area. He made this really great video, which he shows to children all the time, which starts off with him building a house. And then he's like, oh, and the kids kind of say, oh, that's a rubbish house, it looks really terrible. He's like, yeah, you're right. And he presses a button on his computer, and then a house just appears. And they all go, whoa, because they've just spent hours and hours building these structures that he can create with code, with just 6 lines of code. And so we found this is a really exciting way to get boys and girls interested in computer science, where they can see something really visual happen very quickly. So I do recommend, I have a video, but it's on YouTube, so I'm concerned that the Wi-Fi won't hold up, so head to his website and you'll see it. Another project that I've been heavily involved in is Sonic Pi. So when I first started using Raspberry Pis in the classroom, I was introduced to a guy called Dr. Sam Aaron, and actually in the Make It Digital video, he was briefly on it. He came to my classroom, and together we thought of a way in which we could help young people get started with Raspberry Pi, and in particular with text-based programming. And for him, as a musician, it was all about music. And so he went away and he built this application called Sonic Pi. And you type text-based text-based code into it, you press run and it plays sound. And so children are doing 2 things. They are composing music and they're learning computer science almost by stealth. And the good news now is that this application is cross-platform. So it's not just on Raspberry Pi, it's on Windows, Mac. It's completely open source, so lots of people get involved with it. And it's a really fun way to engage people and show that, I think someone in Ian Livingston's video earlier this morning said, they wish that in music lessons they could have written their music using code. Well, now they can. And in fact, we have a whole scheme of work for music teachers teaching music, but using this instead. And so anyone who says that computer science is not creative, not cross-curricular, you're wrong. You're just wrong. Something else we do is we fund an intern program at Cambridge University. And so for the last 2 years, the interns have been working on this, which is called Pyland. Something that we've noticed is there's a big problem with moving children from visual programming languages to text-based programming languages, especially something like Python. We find a lot of teachers are really good with Scratch and they find the children love it, but they can't get them off Scratch and onto something that will help them because the leap is too large. And so we've been working on this project, which is kind of like a Zelda-style game in which children have to write Python code in order to move the monkey, which is called Milo, and the little adventurer character through some different puzzles. And this is open source, and the intention is that teachers would be able to write their own challenges on it so that children can have a go, and it could really help facilitate lessons. So do have a look at Project Pyland. I mentioned that our community is, just fantastic. And so something that happened that really surprised Raspberry Pi was that the community got together and they started running these events called Raspberry Jams. And so this is just where a bunch of people get together, they run workshops, they have show and tell, they do some hacking on Raspberry Pis, and they just kind of hang out. And we find that that's a really good way that teachers have upskilled themselves, or parents have taken children along, and children have started to get really engaged in computer science. And we have a map on our website which shows globally where all the Raspberry Jam events are. And if you want to run one, you can just fill out the form on our website and it will appear on our calendar and on our map as well. And this is just getting people together in a room doing stuff is the most powerful thing that can happen. Like hackathons we're finding in the UK through Young Rewired State. Kids just love them. They really love building a project and having the time and the freedom and access to people that can help them achieve it. The community also started a magazine called The Magpie. It's recently come in-house to the Raspberry Pi Foundation. We now run it. It's a completely free online magazine, but it's also available in like magazine shops in the UK and in the States, and we're hoping it will become global. When I was about to board my plane to come over here, I went into W.H. Smith in Heathrow Airport, and it was on the shelf. And so it's full of project ideas, full of tutorials, full of information about what's happening around Raspberry Pi and physical computing in general. We're not just limited to one device. We do consider Arduino, Microbit, CodeBug, all the different platforms that there are. If you want to know more about any of the educational stuff that we're doing, once a month I write an educational newsletter. It will be emailed to you, you can sign up for it, or you can read some of our past editions on our website. And again, we don't just talk about Raspberry Pi, we talk about all the kind of programming initiatives that are happening in the UK and globally. So we have a whole bunch of stuff that's free, right? Educational resources, training, software, community, projects, just so much stuff that's completely free because people buy Raspberry Pis and that money comes to us and we spend it in this way because we want to give back. And our goal, as we say, is not to sell Raspberry Pis or be a big tech company. Our goal is around education and computer science. And so there's a couple of things I want to leave you with. The first one is this. So once Sam had come to my classroom and we had taught Sonic Pi for a while and he left, my students all wrote him a card. And one of my students, called Ruth, she wrote to Sam, "Thank you for making dull, lifeless computers interesting and almost reality." And this is one of the most heartbreaking things I think I've ever read, especially as I'd worked really, really hard to make sure this wasn't the case, but she'd written it anyway, so obviously I'd failed. But her starting point is that computers are dull and lifeless. Dull and lifeless, which is the complete polar opposite, of course, of what they are. You know, you can control computers to do so many things, but that was her starting point. They were dull and lifeless, and almost not quite real in some way. That they were, you know, apart from her. That they would, you know, she had no control over them. And so, you know, we need to make sure that we don't continue with this, and that we help children become creators of technology and create, you know, really creators of their own future. And so, thinking about the future, you know, let's consider for a moment that if this movement that's kind of taking over the world, this maker movement, this computer science, this code movement that's kind of happening, what will the future look like if we're successful? You know, we talk about reading, writing, arithmetic being 3 R's. It could be the 4 R's. We could have reading, writing, arithmetic, and Raspberry Pi. You know, that generation in 25 years' time, what will the world look like? Those children are going to go into military. They're going to go into government. They're going to go into medicine. They're going to go into all these different disciplines. We're not saying that every child should be a computer scientist, right? We're not saying every child should go and work for Microsoft or Google or anyone else, but just to have that understanding of open source, have that understanding of what it is to create and solve problems and create technology to solve those problems. If they go into all of those disciplines, what could this world be like? And I hope, and it's my true hope, that it will be a much better place that we will be living in. So that's kind of my big spiel at the end. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Carrie-Ann. That was amazing. And as she mentioned, she has a workshop after lunch, which is very short-lived, but we do have time for 1 or 2 questions, if there's any. I can see one in the back.
Hi. I'm just wondering, you said you had a lot of initiatives for teachers, in-service teachers. What about teacher training and teacher education?
Yeah.
Is this change in the curriculum reflected in teacher training?
Yes, so there's lots of movements. One of the first by BCS, the British Computer Society, was to recruit teachers, recruit future teachers straight from university, so computer science graduates who have firsts. You know, they've been given this kind of carrot of a £20,000 bursary for them to train as teachers. But of course, computer science graduates are, you know, everybody wants them at the moment. And if you've got one that's also good at, whose personal skills are very good and they're really good at talking, you know, who would be a perfect teacher, they're even more interesting to you know, employers. So it's still a bit of a losing battle on that front. Lots of the teacher training centres in the country, yes, they have, you know, they are looking into how they can improve their computer science. We work with a lot of the ITT, we call them, initial teacher training. We're working with a lot of them, of those providers. We're also trading them so they can pass that training on. CAS run a lot of stuff with all the universities as well. So we're definitely working with, yeah, teacher trainers too.
Okay, that looks like that was it for the questions. Thank you again, Carrie-Ann. Of course, you will also get one of these amazing cardboard virtual reality glasses. And let's go and make that workshop happen.
Thank you so much. It's
Thank
really
you.
kind. Thank you.
Da er det lunsj 1 time, og før det begynner igjen her. Og